Welcome to Enlightenment of Change on webtalkradio.net. Hi, I'm your host, Connie Whitman. So before I jump into the show, I just want to share everybody. Number one, I hope you feel my passion for the show. That's why I do it, because I'm passionate about it. But I'm really passionate about this topic of change. And I know everybody is navigating something in their life. So I hope between myself, my guests, and the tools that we provide during the show, that you understand that whatever change you're looking for, it's probably easier than you think. So hopefully you're trying to grow your client base or scale your income or scale your business. All of those things my guests and I can help you with. For me, at the end of the day, I want the show to inspire you to change something in your life so you live the life that you desire. And I think that's real important. So as always, I will start my show with a quote, and today it's by Socrates. And Socrates says, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new." So now when you hear the word change, what do you immediately feel? And I want you to think about feeling. Is it fear, excitement, uncertainty, all of the above? Why is it when someone tells us that something is changing, and let's say in our work environment, that we typically feel like our stomachs start to turn and burn? The word change at work usually evokes a certain level of panic before we feel or even see the possible opportunities that may lie within. You know what? We're human, and we measure, and the measure of new change is based on the discomfort. Can I not talk today, guys? The discomfort that I feel, because where we feel that discomfort, that's usually where the magic begins to happen. So breathe. Today I have an expert. My guest is Natasha Todorovic, I hope I said that right, Cowan. And whether it's resilience to change, cultures in conflict, or dysfunctional teams, Natasha's expertise includes unraveling people's measure from C-suites to shop floors. Now, rooted in 70 years of research and application, Natasha has more than 25 years experience, she doesn't look that old, applying spiral dynamics, it's a trademarked tool, and programs to reveal root causes of people's problems to organizations. Now, with clients on 5 continents, she's the world leading expert in the approach and helps leaders, teams, and organizations achieve whatever their vision is. So please help me welcome my expert and my wonderful guest today, Natasha, to the show. So Natasha, thanks for being on, taking the time, and helping us delve into this, I think, very important topic.
Connie, it is a treat and a delight to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Truly my pleasure. And I apologize. My mouth is not keeping up with my brain today. Thus, all of those shifts. Usually I'm pretty fluid with my introduction, and I don't know what's going on today. So
clearly it's changing.
I don't know, the energy out there. Something's happening to Connie's brain. But I want to ask, what was the first significant change that you remember having to tackle in your life? Let's start there.
Well, I think the first significant change I had to tackle, not that I remember, but was moving from the country where I came from to the U.S. So I was born in the former Yugoslavia, which no longer exists. So that's a really weird thing to go, whoa, my country doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. And I found, even though I was fairly young, I was translating culture from my parents to my teachers or neighbors, for example, and back. Because my parents, obviously had culture shock when they got here. It wasn't anything like what they were used to. And I think it was normal for me, but the change was in the disruption that my parents had and in the struggle that people around us had to understand them, because they had thick accents and things just didn't work the same way as they were used to. And so I think I've always kind of sat in the middle of change happening.
And I would imagine as a child, your sense of security was from your mom and dad, right? So if you see them in a little bit of a struggle, you know, emotionally, I could think from a child's perspective that you really did feel like you were in the middle of like, what's going on, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What? this is normal. Why is it not normal for you? Is there something I need to be aware of? So yeah, you do pay more attention.
Yeah, which it's a great skill to develop. Where did your family migrate to when you first moved here?
It was to Colorado. So we were here for about 7 years, and then the next change was we moved to Montreal. My father was working at the University of Colorado, got a job at the University of Montreal. Another culture shock.
Right? You're like you're like the UN, right, within your own
like with between the ages of 0 to 9 UN city.
That is crazy. Now, where are your mom and dad still alive?
My mom passed away a couple of months ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Is he still in Montreal, or does he?
No, they're in California.
Okay.
So, we all kind of came here. California is the place where it was like, oh my gosh, this is the only place that really feels like home.
Isn't that amazing?
I'm going to stay here.
It's amazing. You find where you belong, right? You walk there and you think, oh my God, this feels right to me. What an extraordinary start with talking about change. And as a child, you had no control over that, right? Really, your parents called the shots. So
what are you going to do at 7 years old? Go, no, I'm staying here with my tree.
Yeah, my friends, whatever it is. So that, like my intro said, sometimes we choose the change, sometimes it's thrust upon us. How do we respond to that? So that's interesting. As a child, you really had to understand and navigate change, or you would have been debilitated, as a 7-year-old as kid. And that's bad. That's not a good thing. Now, in my intro, it would have been bad. In my intro, I mentioned spiral dynamics and how does it help people with this transformation? Because that's really what it is. It's a transformation process or tool, right?
Well, yes, it is. So spiral dynamics is rooted in the research of my husband's mentor, Claire W. Graves. So he started researching the nature of human nature back in the mid to late 50s. And he saw Maslow savaged in front of an APA conference, and poor Maslow's sitting there with his head in his hands on the couch going, poor me, why did they do this to me? And Dr. Graves thought, well, I can research this. I can prove he's right. And he set about doing the research on the nature of human nature, on what is the mature adult personality in operation. And he found at the end of it, Maslow wasn't right.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah, and my husband, he was my husband's mentor. They worked together for the last decade of his life. And my husband and some colleagues developed these assessments. My husband wrote the book, Spiral Dynamics. I met him in 1998. I was invited to join the company. And it's really about human nature and change. How do we lead through change? How do we lead ourselves? How do we learn? How do we motivate others? How do we motivate ourselves? And what is change all about? And so I was really blessed and gifted to be able to work on in 15 different countries, doing certification programs in our change readiness assessment, for example, and our other spiral dynamics tools, and really work with people in different cultures and different places. So that's kind of history in a nutshell.
Which, see, again, how, like, that early experience, this was the perfect job for you. How many years later, it was the perfect job for you because you were born almost as a change agent. So of course you should be the one using these tools, teaching these tools, certifying change, because it's kind of the essence of what I get from you, again, starting from that young child, is that you've been thrown through change over and over and over again, and you seem change is thrust upon us. Then what do you do? So now we have these resources like spiral dynamics. The other word you used is human nature. We are human after all. So we are who we are. Our wiring is our wiring. Our development from child those different, 0 to 5, right? How we are wired from experiences through our parents. And then we could have limiting beliefs later on. Because of that, we don't even know where it comes from. We're human, and all of this is real. And now it's so scientifically proven that it even gives more validity that I'm not crazy, right? That, other people are going through the same thing, whatever it is. Now, you talk about the 5 C's of change. So can we talk about the 5 C's of change? And then I'm curious, because right now, you said leading through change. Right now, leaders need to lead through crisis change, not even just normal seed change, right? But global, this pandemic globally. So what are the 5 C's, and how do you see it correlating to those surviving and thriving versus those who are, kind of curling up in a ball?
Well, I love how you're kind of conveying it, Connie, because you're kind of saying there's like a little C, and then maybe a medium C, and then a big C, and then a big bold C.
And then the ginormous C, right?
Yeah, 60 font.
Right, exactly.
So and you mentioned one of them, the behaviors, the beliefs, the values that we hold are the kinds of things that we'll put at the content level of change. And so those are things that are easier to see, they're easier to change, they're easier to work with. And then below that is what we call connection. And we transform, we grow, we downward spiral because of our connections with others. If they are empowering, if they're deep, if they're meaningful, if we're seen for who we are, we'll grow, we'll blossom. If we are, if we feel rejected, if we feel hurt frequently, if we are told, those negative messages that sometimes people who are not fully self-aware and who are not fully healed will give to others when they're crushed. And that's the connection piece, who we are to one another and how open we are, how much heart, how much healthiness there is in the connection. And that's the other one. And then we've got context. And context is our environment. That is when change is thrust upon us. Well, by the same token, we can change our environment. But all those historical messages from teachers, from parents, from friends, what the media tells us, what we learn in books, what our teachers say, how we're treated in school, how we're treated by colleagues, all of those pieces are part of our context that shapes us. We're looking at this as complex adaptive systems. So our relationship systems, in a sense, create who we are. And then the other piece is conceptualization. How do we cope with that world? How do we think? How do we think about our thinking? How do we think about our feeling? What skills and aptitudes do we have to receive or shift or change or deal with the world that we're presented with? So those are our C's, and change can lie at any one of those different levels. And the context, what we found is there's a cognitive bias for most people around not seeing their own context. So we're like the proverbial fish in the goldfish bowl. And when we teach people to start mapping context, it takes a while because we just have this cognitive bias against seeing our own context.
And that's why change is so hard, right? Because it's difficult to reflect and see what's really going on, because we don't always know what the root cause is of whatever's happening. Like, you respond to a situation and somebody else can look and say, that's ridiculous, what's going on, because we don't know where that trauma or whatever is being grown from, right? So it's very hard to self-reflect and change because it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and our brains prefer to kind of chillax a little bit.
Sure.
And the self-reflection does take an enormous amount of brain power.
I can imagine.
Also, the developing of new skills, developing of new beliefs, reshaping our habits into new habits and behaviors, awful lot of energy. Our bodies, our minds, ourselves like to live in this kind of balanced homeostasis.
Yeah, but I think also there's an element of routine, right? Humans, we like routine too, and we function automatically. We just do things. You know, you have your morning routine, your night routine. So we do so many things in an automatic state of presence that when then change comes to you and you're forced to, the habit's gone now. What do I do? And that's what happened with COVID, right? We were getting up, we were going to work, we were sitting in traffic, and then all of a sudden it was like, now you need to stay home. And everybody was like, what? What? So
what am I going to do? No.
Yes.
How am I going to get my regular coffee, my cappuccino?
Yeah. And I would imagine too, Natasha, that you see with the one, it was connection. The 1C was the connection, that we need to be connected to people. Hopefully you choose positive people to surround you. But sometimes we have negative thinkers in our family who put us down, right? Verbal abuse, whatever it might be that people are dealing with. But with COVID, the connectivity was gone unless you were forced to use Zoom or you were able to use Zoom. But a lot of people felt very isolated, right? Aren't the statistics coming out that alcoholism has skyrocketed, depression has skyrocketed because we're...
Yeah, absolutely. And here's one of the places where Maslow was wrong, because the
hierarchies,
pyramid of needs, hierarchy of needs.
Right.
At the bottom he's got the physiological, the drinking, the sleeping, and all of that. Connection is one of our most deepest, most profound needs.
Yeah.
That I don't know if you remember hearing about the research of the orphans in the orphanage in Bulgaria. But the the babies who weren't held, who weren't touched, who weren't nurtured, who didn't have that caretaker and that connection, didn't thrive. Many of them ended up not really able to function. It's a basic core need.
Yeah.
So one of the things we want to ask ourselves is every connection we make for the better or for the worse? And what can we do to improve the way we connect with others?
And it's a journey, right? And you really do want to surround yourself. And I say this cautiously, like-minded people, but be careful, because sometimes if we have a very limited perspective and we surround ourselves with people who say, yep, you're right. Meanwhile,
we all believe the same thing. The world is flat.
Yeah, that's dangerous, right? So
yeah.
They say that we are a reflection of the 5 people that we spend most of our time with. How have you found that really does impact this whole element of change?
Well, so I love where you just went with that, Connie, because if all 5 people and all you see is those 5 people and all you're saying is that the world is flat, then yeah, those are some of the things we're going to believe. But that saying isn't actually true. Because if we look at ourselves in these relationship systems, in these environmental, social conditions and contexts that we find ourselves in, and start leaning into some of the research, there was an extensive piece of research done on heart attack patients. So they did family, they did history, they did everything they ate. They just did a massive amount of research. And what they found was if we are in connection, in relationship with somebody who happens to be obese, heavy, we are 45% more likely to be obese.
Really?
Now, here's the kicker. Say my friend Sally is obese, and then her friend Jane, who I've never met before, is also obese. Jane's obesity has a 20% likelihood to cause me to put on weight. So we are truly connected and interdependent and interwoven in these amazing ways that science is just discovering.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And now with the neuroscience being much more mainstream, the NLP, right, that neuro-linguistic programming, you're looking to buy a new car and you think, oh, I don't know what to get. Now all of a sudden you're seeing the Jeeps everywhere, whatever the white Jeep with the, the soft top, you're thinking, oh my gosh, where did all these Jeeps come from? So it's interesting as they do more and more research on the brain that like you said, that connectivity. I had never heard that if your friends are obese and their friends are obese, you have a 20%. What? Like, holy crap.
That shows you just how much one person can impact people around them that they've never met, by what they're modeling, by what they're doing, by, I don't know, brainwaves, I don't know.
Well, I would think it would be the same thing with negative thinkers. If my friend Jane is a negative thinker and her friend Paula is also a negative thinker, chances are I'm going to be an exponentially higher negative thinker as well, right?
It's actually worse than that. So,
really?
Connie, the work that I've done with teams, there's, I forget the researcher's name. He was researching this, like bad apples, people that just bring high function teams down, right? And what he found was one of the behaviors was you can have a high functioning team. You can have 8 or 12 people, they're rocking, they're rolling, they've got it all together, they're working on all cylinders. And you throw in exactly what you said, that kind of depressive, it's never going to work, it's horrible, we're all going to die. And that team that used to be high performing, even if they were all optimists, even if they were functioning very well, that one bad apple just spoils the entire thing. So we can manage for our behavior and see how it shifts. And you're right, it's exponential. The effect is exponential.
Do you find, or through the studies, that negative energy, those people, the woe is me, the sky is constantly falling, that their intensity or what's the right word, that their impact is greater than someone who's a very positive thinker and energizer? Is it greater?
Yeah. Because you know what? We're wired for our core emotions, our basic emotions. They're like 6, and different scientists argue about what they are. But it's fear, hurt, sadness, disgust. I think it's guilt, and then we get happy.
So they're all negative, and the one is the positive.
So we have to really focus on that happy as a muscle and keep building that, and let some of the others not have reactions against our emotions, but really be present with them. Let them inform us, let them tell us what they need. And, think of the emotion like a little 5-year-old kid going, Mommy, Daddy, I need you to pay attention to this, and pay attention to it.
Absolutely.
So it's not a suggestion to react to the emotion. It's a suggestion to look at how are we wired, and we get the one really cool one, right? And then there are different variations and different things that are paraemotions that involve thinking and believing and all of that, and habit and all of that. But the core ones, right? So naturally, if one person is afraid, it just ripples through us. We're a social creature.
And this is what I heard through all of that: choose wisely. The people that are in your orbit and the people that you choose to socialize with or work with or whatever the situation is in your life, you need to choose wisely, because the negative impact can create such a downward spiral for us that it becomes even harder to pull yourself out, even if you are a positive thinker, that you get sucked into that, oh my God, the sky is falling. And we're like, oh my God, the sky is falling. Even though we have that logic and reason to say, well, wait a minute, it's not quite so bad. But if you're surrounded by all these negative thinkers, and that's what's happening on the media, right? The sky is falling, the sky is falling. Yeah, it is. Nothing's ever going to be the same. I think we can all agree with that. But let's see, how are we going to come out of it? What can we foster and innovate from here so that maybe we come out in a better place, not just a worse place, right? Did that just make sense?
Yeah, that made sense. And there's also our capacity to upskill ourselves.
Absolutely.
And for some people, look, the sky is falling.
Yeah.
For some people, this is really
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
And then for other people, I've heard people go, oh my God, best pandemic ever, right? Not a popular thing to say when for some people the sky is falling.
Yeah. There's
But
death and
yeah, but we're having very different experiences in this same, quote, global context. There are leaders who have absolutely freaked out, right? Gone into fear, gone underground, gone into defense. And then there are other leaders who are saying, you know what? Yeah, let's recalibrate. The situation has changed, but there's a way forward, and we'll find a way forward. And I was on a session this morning, and I was like, okay, wait. So there was a 2001 crisis, right?
Yeah.
Lived through that. There was a 2008 global economic recession.
Yeah.
We lived through that. There was the 2000, I think it was 10 H1N1. One of my friends was the first person, the point person in Texas to get it. They had to take a lung out because it was so destructive of her body. She lived. We lived through that. So we will get through this in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And not everyone is going to have a great ride of it. Some people are really going to suffer, but most of us will be fine.
Yeah, we can't see what the future is, because if we all had crystal balls, we'd all be bazillionaires, right? We'd have all the answers, and we don't. So
my portfolio would have done so well.
Oh, you and me both, right? So is there a certain trajectory of change that people can expect with all of this research and information that's available now?
So I think the reason people love spiral dynamics as a program and as an approach is the very optimistic messaging, which is I like to say there are parts of us that are written in ink and parts of us that are written in pencil. And the parts of us that are written in pencil are changeable. And that means if we look at human nature way, way, way back in the beginning, like, 100,000, 200,000, 50,000 years ago, it's very different from the way we are today. So that trajectory is one of increasing complexity. Does that mean better people? Not necessarily, but it does mean that we've got a lot more variables to consider. The growth of empathy is increasing. The ability to deal with uncertainty, ambiguity, differences in different people, we open up to that. There was a time where we spent our entire lifetime in one village on our farm seeing maybe, 150, 200, 500 people in our entire lifetime. And now, for anyone who lives in a city, you're going to see that 500 people on your transit from home to work.
Yeah.
And so that has radically shaped the way we see one another, the way we interface in the world, and some of the changes. Because 100 years ago, nobody would have thought we'd have climate change, that we'd have chemtrails, that we'd have to worry about the environment, that we'd have toxicity because of the world that we created. That wasn't a thing. Now it's a thing. Very radical difference in how we need to cope and what the world is like.
We need to adapt. I mean, and that, right, is an adaptation part of the human nature as well. The shifting, pivoting as our global economy changes, as the global climate change changes. We really have to be able to adapt to all of that. Otherwise, we're not going to survive. So there is an element of, I think humans have that survival mechanism within them, right? Because we do want to survive. Are you finding with everything that's going on now through the spiral dynamics, the research, I bet a ton of research is coming from this COVID experience, right? Because it's global and it's all at once. So everybody is affected at the same time. So you could probably do some good measurements with your research. But are you finding that our coping skills are getting better? Or maybe let me rephrase that. I feel that, like, and I see it with my kids, right? I have a 20-year-old and a 23-year-old. And my husband and I have not made decisions for them their whole life, right? They could choose what sport, they could choose what major, they could choose what school. We didn't dictate anything. And yet sometimes they ask questions and I think, did you just ask me that? Their coping skills are, in my opinion, lacking, right? And I thought, wow, what did I do for them that maybe perhaps I shouldn't have done, that now they can't cope with whatever the silly situation is? Now with this global pandemic, are you finding that we're being forced to regain some form of coping skills because there's no alternative, you know?
Well, I think there's a many-faceted answer to that. And so it depends, and it depends on who it is, and it depends on what they're being forced to cope with. So if you're a restaurant worker, for example, and you've just lost your job because the restaurant's closed, and you're willing to risk your life to find another job, go to work because you're in not as good a position as some people, you might be overwhelmed. And when we're overwhelmed and we're in fear and the world seems like it's closing in, we're going to behave differently than if we're able to work from home comfortably, continue making a living, nurture client relationships, and, be hunkered down in a very comfortable position trying to figure out what do we do to get out of it. So it depends on how much people are overwhelmed, how difficult the situation is, how much bandwidth they need to bring to bear on the problems that they're trying to tackle, and how well they understand this. There are people right now who are saying, you know what, this is a government conspiracy. We need to take off our masks and put the economy back on track. Whatever their rationale is, they're thinking in a different way based on their internal belief structure, their internal processing, the way they see reality, and they're, in some cases, not fully understanding all of the science, or if they are, they're denying it because there's something wrong here. How can we have the flu and not deal with this?
And this is, again, just everything you said, I agree with 100%. And I think that all of us, just humans in general, we have to be kind to our fellow man, because walk in my shoes before you judge me. My mom used to always say that when I was young, and it's true, because you don't know what your neighbor is going through that you can't even conceive. And perhaps your perspective would be drastically different if you were in their shoes, right? So, and your example with the restaurant worker, what about if the restaurant worker, his guilt because he had to close his business and now he can't pay his employees, and all of that guilt that he failed? We have to show kindness and compassion, because everybody is dealing with something, especially we know everybody's dealing with something. We have to show compassion and love, because you don't know what your neighbor is going through. That was so well described.
And your kids might not have anything to do with their capacity to think through things. They just might be wanting reassurance, and that's their way of saying, hey, I want to be connected with you. I want to check in with you. I just want reassurance that what I'm thinking is right, or what I'm doing is right.
So come from a place of kindness and love, right? And I like to say, sprinkle a little joy on those around you if you can, if you have the capacity to do that, given your situation. We're out of time, but I have one more really important question, because I think you're brilliant. So I want to just see your take on this one. Is there anything you can suggest that would make change easier for my listeners right here, right now? They stop listening to the show. What can they implement?
There are a couple of things. Would it be okay if I gave your listeners a gift?
Oh my goodness, of course. I'd love that.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, let's do this. If you're having some challenges with change right now, we've got a playbook. It's a step-by-step guide. It'll walk you through all the key considerations that you need to take into account before making any radical moves. It's a bit.ly link. It's bit.ly/change playbook, and that's with a capital C and a capital P. That's bit.ly, bit.ly/change, capital C, playbook, capital P. And I would suggest that you surf it like a wave, that you listen to what's going on inside you. Don't believe all of it, but pay attention to the feelings. Ask them what they need and want. Reassure them like a child. Be patient with yourself. It takes a while for our neurology to knit together to enable us to adopt new habits and new thinking patterns and new beliefs. So be patient.
And we're not. We beat ourselves up. I didn't do enough. I should be further ahead. We never look back and say, hey, look at all the cool things I've done. We look forward and say, oh, I didn't get everything done that I was supposed to get done, this past month, year, whatever it might be. I will post that bit.ly link, guys, on the website as well. I'll write it. I was writing it as you were saying it, if you saw me look away. Before we hang up, Natasha, I'll make sure I get the right one. So guys, I promise I'll put that up there. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think people listen to the show and we cover this wonderful content, and then and that's why I always ask, what's that one thing somebody could do immediately after the show? Because I feel like if we implement immediately, our trajectory of change becomes just a little bit easier to navigate. So I will share that link with them as well. So thank you so much for offering that. It's so appreciated. I know my listeners appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And guys, listen, I'm going to give you Natasha's website. So if Spiral Dynamics, you're intrigued, you're thinking, I want to learn more about these 5 C's. I want to learn about all this research that Spiral Dynamics is doing. Go to their website. Of course, it's www.spiraldynamicsplural.org. And if you'd like to reach out to Natasha directly, you have a question perhaps, reach out to Natasha at spiraldynamics.org. And again, thank you so much for the free gift. I will post that bit.ly link as well. And you guys, I offer that free communication style assessment. It tells you what your superpowers are with your natural communication abilities and what some of your blind spots are. And we need to know our blind spots too, so we can minimize them. Go to Whitman Assoc, so it's WHITMANASSOC.com/CSA. It's free. You get a little report, and it gives you, again, another tool, another piece of insight as to how you're wired and how you show up. So please feel free to do that. Again, reach out to Natasha at spiraldynamics.org. And thank you, Natasha. I hate that we're out of time there. I feel like we've hit the tip of the iceberg, that there's so much more that you guys do at Spiral Dynamics that can help people maybe come up with a plan of how to approach change and get a little more control, so their future, that, again, we talked about that trajectory, but that trajectory is a positive, not that they feel so stuck. And I think a lot of people feel stuck right now. So again, I hope guys check out Natasha's website for tremendous insight. So thank you so much for being on. So appreciated. And just what a great conversation. Thank you so much, Natasha.
It has just been such a treat and a pleasure to do this with you, Connie. Thank you so much.
Really,
you were so much fun. I could talk to you forever.
I know. It's funny, guys. At the beginning of the show, Natasha's like, I don't think we're going to have a problem talking and filling that, the 30, 40 minutes. And we did not. It went like that. So, yeah. Don't hang up yet. You guys, I hope you will join me and my guests weekly as we question, build, and discover together that change is possible, maybe easier than we initially think. And I hope, again, the tools that we provide, the resources, content, conversations, help you navigate that change so it's just a little bit easier for you. That truly is my wish for you. I want everyone to have the life they desire, and really that we all deserve, not even just desire, that we deserve. Thank you so much for joining us today. Natasha, again, thank you for being on. You've been listening to Enlightenment of Change with me, your host, Connie Whitman, on webtalkradio.net. I do wish everyone an inspired week, and use Natasha's free resource and maybe start to plan your path of change, whatever that looks like for you. So be well, everyone, be inspired, and just have a great week. Thanks.